problem for me. So as Alyssa said, my name's Giovanna Iozzi. I helped organise the first Parkland Walk protest, and I'm part of the Haringey Tree Protector Group with Hannah, who's sitting over there. She's amazing. She was part of the whole protest. We hit the local press. I don't know, as locals you probably know, we hit the local press, the Ham and High, quite a few times. And our actions basically resulted in a moratorium on the felling of the remaining trees around the bridge works. You know, sadly many of the trees already felled, much of the vegetation is gone, but we have managed to stop them, and we're in ongoing talks with them at the moment. What happened on the Parkland Walk represents, I think, in microcosmic form what is happening all over the UK, Europe and the forests of the world. 1 million species are currently on the brink of extinction globally, and biodiversity is in freefall. In 2020, the World Wildlife Living Planet report found an average 68% decrease in population sizes of mammals, birds, amphibians, and the list goes on. Incredibly depressing and tragic kind of information we're getting all the time. Humans are now overusing the Earth's biocapacity by at least 56%, and we're now living through the 6th mass extinction. As we all know, as you probably all know, biodiversity is the variety of all life on Earth, including all species of animals and plants, including us, of course. The general picture is alarming. The UK is failing on most of its long-term biodiversity targets. Natural England has seen its budget cut by £180 million since 2008, and continued cuts are having a huge impact on the protection of habitats. I could go on depressingly, sort of shoving sort of figures and stats at you. But back to Haringey and the Parkland Walk, one of the, because I really want to focus on this, as I say, because I really see it as a micro example of what's happening sort of globally. One of the worst eco-atrocities that actually happened there was the felling of a number of oaks. I don't know if you know them or knew them. They're more than 100 years old, and they were at the Muswell Hill end of the walk. And the Parks Department have actually admitted it was a complete mistake. Okay, so it was a fudge because they misunderstood the 5-metre stipulation for the bridges. They miscalculated it. Okay, so some of those could have been saved. And as a kind of memoriam to them, I'd like to focus on the oaks that we lost there for a moment, and oaks generally as wonderful, wonderful trees. And they're kind of capsules of the miraculous and biodiverse power of nature. According to the Woodland Trust, no other tree species in the UK supports a greater diversity of life than an ancient oak. Research published by the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology in 2019 revealed oak's huge significance for biodiversity. Oak trees alone support 2,300 species, 326 of which are entirely independent on the trees for their survival, and 229 species are rarely found on trees other than oaks. So they're hugely important trees, as we all know. They support 31 different kind of mammals, and acorns are a favourite food of many woodland creatures, including badgers, deers, wild boars, we don't get many of them in North London, squirrels and wood mice. Okay, so even as saplings, oaks get to work straight away, providing food and homes for wildlife. They can live up to 1,000 years. One mature tree can sequester as much carbon as 500 saplings. So an oak tree is really a whole world of life, a whole universe really. As well as the oaks on the Parkland Walk, fruit trees were lost. Vegetation was brush cut to the ground by contractors who had no real arboricultural knowledge. They weren't supervised. They were following a vague brief to cut everything within 5 metres of the bridges. But they also cut, if you're a regular walk on the walk, they cut trees all the way up. This really happened because officials wanted to, the reason the council decided to do this work was they wanted to ascertain whether damage was being done to the bridges by the trees. But to me, you know, it's a bit like finding something guilty before with no absolute proof. You know, like trees are blamed for lots of damage and often aren't really damaging buildings or structures at all. Again, in this small way, the Parkland Walk work represents what is happening on the much bigger stage. Man-made structures, i.e. the bridges here, were being given complete priority over nature. Trees, as well as buildings, are part of our heritage. They need to be treated with the same respect. It shows a fundamental, even willful lack of care, understanding and knowledge about nature. And this lack of progressive thoughtfulness and what can be done to retain rich biodiversity happens at both a local and central government level, despite climate emergencies being declared all over the UK. The government's environment bill is currently being debated in the Commons, but its targets for biodiversity are still fundamentally too weak. As Natalie Bennett of the Green Party said in the Commons, I think yesterday, biodiversity is a library of life, of ideas, of ways of interrelating. And it has been said that what we're doing by burning biodiversity is burning through the library of life. I think it's a fantastic quote there. Running alongside the Environment Bill is the government's new planning bill, which seeks to relax the laws for developers even more. Seems a contradiction in terms. The government has also announced the biggest road building programme since, I think, the Second World War. You do start to wonder how biodiversity will sit alongside these massive infrastructure plans and bills, which may well become acts in law. The greenwash ahead of COP26 is unbelievable at times, and as we speak, HS2 is ripping through ancient woodlands, 108, including Jones Wood, a recent campaign, nature reserves, villages, and has also resulted in the felling of some of London's most beautiful plane trees at Euston. Coming back to Haringey Council, they're currently writing a new biodiversity action plan, which hasn't actually been updated, I think, since 2009, and a new trees and woodlands plan is being drafted. But so far there's a worrying lack of detail on specific protections for existing trees, which is really my kind of interest. They're all still vulnerable to threats from developers and insurance claims. New planting won't replace felling existing mature trees, and we need a really robust biodiversity action plan. Sometimes, I suppose this is the part of the talk where I'm saying, what can we do? What can we do? Apart from feeling hopeless, we can take action, which is what I did. Sometimes the only way is to go is to start local and try and persuade your council to do things better. As part of the Haringey Tree Protectors and also as a member of Extinction Rebellion, we want greater protections for trees and green spaces, which will help biodiversity at a local level. We want enhanced protections for trees. All trees over 7-inch diameter need TPOs that are enforced, not just those in conservation areas. The council needs to communicate to all residents that every tree matters. Waltham Forest, Hackney and Islington have raised the status of trees and are centralising tree planning, especially when it comes to development. But Haringey are woefully, they're really slow on the uptake. We want a really ambitious biodiversity action plan at a local and central level that talk about blue spaces too. You know, if we're talking about biodiversity, we're talking about ponds, rivers, waterways, reservoirs, etc., and about rewilding, not just conservation. Every park could be rewilded with help from surrounding schools and residents, with corridors planned to connect all our green spaces. We want non-invasive management, no chemical spraying. Glyphosate is a terrible problem in our parks. And grasses and flowers left to grow, with a ban on cutting during the summer to support insect life and help sequester carbon. We want a better staffed trees team in Haringey. At the moment they have one trees manager and a few part-timers, and we desperately need greater community engagement from them, such as the Tree Council's volunteer tree warden scheme or an adopt a tree park corner scheme for individual streets or neighbourhood groups. My final point is, as our leaders need to show us that they value trees and green spaces, that trees matter. I want to leave a better planet for my children. They love climbing trees, and I want to see them climb for many more years to come. Thank you.